Hello, welcome back to Freed from the Real. I'm Jeff. With me is my good buddy DJ Alpha Tyler.
What up?
And today we're going to be reviewing David Lynch's Mulholland Drive.
Where's this going?
Mulholland Drive. It's been a very strange day.
Getting stranger.
All right, so here we are in my studio, which looks a lot like my kitchen.
It does.
This is going to be the first entry in a video playlist where we talk about films. Tyler might not always be in them, but he will be a recurring guest. Hopefully, if he enjoys it.
Yeah.
Tyler also has his own YouTube channel, which I will post in the description of this video below, so check it out.
Yes, sir.
Anyways, today we're talking about Mulholland Drive. This was my introduction to David Lynch. I had never seen Twin Peaks. It was big, when we were little babies.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to watch it then. Someone told me to check out this film, that it would fuck my mind up. And I watched it, and I thought it was fantastic. That was years ago. When I pitched this idea to you, I decided to sit down and rewatch it again for this video. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts, because I believe, unless you've watched something else in the past, this is probably your first David Lynch project.
Yeah, I think it's my first David Lynch film. Definitely the first time I saw this, too. I watched it a couple of days ago, finally, after, hanging on to it for a minute. I really enjoyed it. So there was probably a solid, 15 minutes where I just felt like I had no clue what was going on in this movie. Then after that, there was about a 30-minute window where I was like, okay, is this a jump scare movie? Like after that first piece at the diner, yeah. That one jump scare in the movie, I'm like, okay, is it some kind of thriller? Because I mean, it to be fair, it led up to that jump scare really well. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, is this the thing that we're going with in this movie? Are we, where are we coming at? By the end of it, I realized, I'm like, okay, so it's just really going in about 30 different directions. And then, like my broad overview, right around the middle, I felt like I understood what was happening, like the stories that we were jumping around between.
Yeah.
And then for the ending, I got back to the point where I was like, I didn't know anything that was happening at all.
So David Lynch's work, it's very surreal. It's very, let's just say, the word's escaping me right now.
Spastic.
I think surreal's probably the best.
Yeah.
The best descriptor. One thing he does that I like a lot is his use of color. And especially in this film, there are a lot of uses of color, specifically blue, mm-hmm. To symbolize, I believe, more of the dreamlike elements. Mm-hmm. The dreamlike things that are going on. There's red, which symbolizes sort of a darker sexual nature. Mm-hmm. You'll notice, like, for example, I believe it's hinted at that the main character, Betty, who's really Diane, was a prostitute at some point, because it shows the pimp, who she hired as a hitman, the girl that looks a lot like her, and then it shows Diane answer a red cell phone, which we know was calling from the one guy, forget, but he was calling for a showgirl or for a girl. But yeah, I guess it's impossible to talk about this film without just immediately saying spoilers. Spoiler warning.
Spoiler alert coming ahead. We have both seen this movie, and we're going to actually discuss things from it. So,
all right. So the plot basically starts with, we see this blonde-haired woman, Betty, She wins a jitterbug dance contest.
Yeah.
And she goes to Hollywood to make her dream come true of being an actress. She moves into her aunt's house or apartment or condo. I don't know what it is.
I assume it's like a Hollywood condo. Well, it's Hollywood, and her aunt is pretty wealthy, so I assume it's a condo. But it's an indoor structure of some sort, because there's the one scene where the other lady's knocking on the door and she's coming out of a hallway and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it's a condo.
And it's there that we also see the other main character, Rita. She's in a car accident. She survives, stumbles down the hill. For Mulholland Drive, and ends up sleeping in the house that Betty will be staying in.
Yep.
And then they meet, and Betty's not creeped out at all that there's a stranger in her shower, because it's a hot chick who's naked, and she kind of swings that way. So,
which we find out in graphic detail later.
Graphic, beautiful detail.
It's about love. It's about love. And it's so
It was
beautiful.
tender. It was really, really...
Yeah, no, it's real important.
At the beginning, you'll notice it's something that I forgot after watching it. You do see someone lay down and go to sleep, which, in the grand scheme of the film, at least my interpretation of it is what we see in the first 90% of it or whatever is a dream or an illusion.
Yeah.
What's real is Diane Selwyn, Naomi, that's staying in. Naomi Watts' character, Diane Selwyn, is a failed Hollywood actress. And her life has basically gone to shit. She has a lover, Camilla Rhodes, who is Rita. Camilla is now, or has been, sleeping with the director and moving up in Hollywood because of that.
Yeah.
So we see that. I think I like the interpretation that the film is really about, because Lynch projects always have like layers and meanings and interpretations. And, on the surface, it's about Rita and Betty, but then below that, it's about Diane and Camilla, and then below that, what I think it's fully about, actually, is the Hollywood dream.
Yeah.
Sort of that illusion of the Hollywood dream. Diane, she goes to Hollywood. She's going to be this great actress. She works at a diner as a little waitress, making ends meet. And then, for reasons beyond her control, she gets kind of cheated out of being a success. The director, he's sleeping with women, he's picking certain ones. Powerful people behind the scenes already have picked who they want. So her, it's not her fault. She's just a victim of the system.
I wanted the lead so bad. Anyway, Camilla got the part.
Is it the death of Diane, or is it the death of the dream, the Hollywood dream?
I think dreams are a big part of the movie, and that's one thing that stood out to me. So, I was talking about the one jump scare in the movie. That's kind of preceded.
Done.
Yeah,
he told us exactly what was gonna happen.
Yeah,
and it was still scary.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where you're looking in close to it, to see, like, because I don't know about you. When I watched it, I'm literally looking exactly where the dude jumped out, and like, I didn't know what he was gonna look like, but I'm staring there. Was it? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Although I think it's supposed to be a man in the movie. I don't know.
Well, it looked masculine to me, and so the idea that I got was it kind of looked like a homeless dude. You know what I'm saying? But when he jumps out, there was, he was talking about he had the dream. He had it multiple times. Mm-hmm. It was at that diner. It was kind of tied in. And the thing that stood out to me is everything revolved around somebody sleeping, almost like, when you're talking about kind of the idea of the Hollywood dream and everything, I'm thinking about there was the story with his dreams. Then there was, when they go to Diane's actual house, her apartment and all that, they find the dead person laying on the bed.
Yeah.
And there's several scenes with Rita, especially, her first thing, she wants to sleep it off. She's sleeping in this house. And so it's like a lot of things kind of did revolve around sleep. Now, I didn't make that connection until you said it right there. But I'm, running through it back in my head right now. I'm thinking about all of the times that there was somebody laying down or sleeping or something like that. And that's kind of the idea that I'm kind of taking from it. I had to keep reminding myself too that it was Hollywood. And so it's all kind of like a movie inside of a movie. You know what I mean? Like, it almost feels like it's meant to feel like a production. Yeah. Because if you didn't know that it was in Hollywood, I wouldn't even really associate it as being in California at all, because it doesn't have the image that I have of California. You know what I mean? I mean, right. Everything's bright and vibrant, and they're outside a lot. They go to Diane's house when they're looking for her, and she's swapped apartments or whatever. And they go there, and I'm looking at them like, so this isn't what apartments look like in Hollywood, I
wouldn't know.
Well, I don't think so. I wouldn't know either.
California, but it's one of those movies where the more you look into it and the more you can connect things, you really start to appreciate it more and more, because it is very deep. One thing I wanted to touch on was, I know you mentioned dream sequences in the film, and one of my favorite scenes when I first watched it was the Club Silencio scene. The one
that was the red theater, right? Like the
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, it's like got a blue door, a blue sign. It's blue inside. A lady with blue hair, very bluish, kind of with the illusion. And that's what they're saying in the actual play that's happening. The narrator keeps saying, "There is no band. It's all pre-recorded. It's all an illusion."
No hay banda. There is no band. Il n'est pas d'orchestra. This is all a tape recording.
That scene, like you said, Diane and Rita, Betty and Rita, they only knew to go there because Rita was asleep. She started saying, "Silencio, Silencio." And then she leads her there. So, and I think Club Silencio is kind of where, because all throughout the film, it's like Rita or Betty is dreaming, and slowly she starts to remember like the terrible thing, the reality of the situation. I think Club Silencio is when she really remembers and realizes.
Well, the thing on that is, it's pitched from the beginning that Rita doesn't remember anything, but it's really Betty who's not either she's playing stupid to the whole thing, or she's not remembering who Rita was.
It's just that I think it's that fantasy.
Yeah.
That illusion. And then right after Club Silencio is when they turn the key, open the box, and then we get what's actually real.
Yeah.
The director, he goes and he meets the cowboy.
Howdy. Howdy to you.
The cowboy is sort of like this manifestation of fate or something.
Yeah.
And, he says something along the lines of, I believe a man's attitude goes a certain ways.
Your attitude dictates your life, basically, how your life's going to turn out.
A man's attitude goes some ways, the way his life will be. Is that something you might agree with?
Sure.
Now, did you answer because that's what you thought I wanted to hear? Or did you think about what I said and answer because you truly believe that to be right?
And I always thought that was a really weird and neat thing. And he's a prick, to the cowboy.
Yeah. The director, when he first came into the movie, actually, when he's kind of being a douchebag to all the actors and everything, and getting fired, and then he goes out and beats up the dude's car with the golf club and all that. Like, that whole series was one of the most captivating parts of the movie to me. Especially he comes home, finds his wife in bed with another dude, and that guy's like
Billy Ray Cyrus looking guy.
Was it Billy Ray Cyrus?
I don't know.
I think it was.
It looked a lot like him.
I'm almost positive that was Billy Ray Cyrus. But anyway, and the guy's going through, and he just randomly gets her jewelry box, pours paint in the jewelry, and he's just trying to get it all in there and everything, and then he gets her up on the counter, and then this guy comes in and, well, that's no way to treat your wife no matter what she done, buddy.
That ain't no way to treat your wife, buddy. I don't care what she's done.
That character was interesting to me, and then seeing where he played, like you said, after the veil was lifted and it kind of came back to reality, seeing kind of how he was that wedge between them. In the fantasy world, he was getting cheated on. In reality, he was kind of the wedge between the two of them. That was, I guess, if I'm thinking that this was Diane's fantasy,
Right.
then that's an interesting contrast to see how the person who got in the middle of her love is now getting cheated on in the first half of the movie, in the fantasy part of the movie.
Well, I think that's part of her fantasy, is that in this illusion, he is a failure.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of like a cuckold.
Yeah.
Involuntarily. So it's all part of, like, he's this awful person. She hates him. So in this alternate reality, he's gonna have a shit life.
So his wife's with the mullet when he comes home.
Yeah, he can't work on his own movies.
Yeah,
or he can't pick the actresses; they're predetermined for him, so he doesn't have control. He's getting psyched out by cowboys on top of mountains.
Yep.
I love the scene where he's auditioning the girls, and the lady's singing that song, and then he sees Betty, and he does the whole "this is the girl" thing, and he's looking at her.
This is the girl.
Excellent choice.
That's when she panics and runs off or whatever.
Yeah, and that's almost kind of like a break in the illusion when she's making eye contact with him, and she has that moment because she's actually just done really well.
I think.
Yeah, because she's just done really, really well in an audition. She comes to this one, probably going to do well too, but she did well in the movie that's not going to be made. She's coming to the one where it actually might, and then she runs when they make eye contact. And I didn't. That's another thing that I kind of glossed over when it happened because I'm like, I just. She runs back to Rita and she acts like nothing crazy is happening. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it shows you that clip of where he's on set with Camilla, and that guy in the car, and he's kind of showing how he wants the set to unfold.
Yeah.
Let her lean in and kind of move her head to kiss. So you kind of see like the seeds of that relationship, or some, I believe.
That move. There's no break.
The scene where they're sitting in the car and he's sitting with Camilla / Rita is after we're back to reality, because then she says, "Can Diane stay?" Because he tells everybody off the set, "Let's make it seem like the way it would be."
Yeah.
She says, "Can Diane stay?" And he does, and you kind of see like her face dropping and everything, and that was kind of, honestly, maybe I was slow, maybe I was just hesitant to take anything from this movie at that point, because I'm like, I don't know what's about to get undone or changed. But that was actually the point where it clicked to me that, oh, So she's jealous of what they have going on. Like
Every character that you see in the film is someone that Diane interacted with at some point. And,
Yeah.
And a lot of them were at the director guy's house for that party where Camilla met her on Mulholland Drive and told her she knew a shortcut, which could be a metaphor for sleeping with directors to get success.
Yeah.
Shortcut. Come on, sweetheart. It's beautiful.
Sort of like that back door to success. That might have been a bad phrasing on that one, but anyways, like
there's something with a back door there.
When she's at that party, she's answering, she's talking to the people. She mentions that she met Camilla on set of a movie, and you see like the cowboy walking by in the background, and the landlord lady is the one that's there asking some questions. And so it's all connected, and it's all plays part in this fantasy of Diane's. The bar where the evil lives out back is where she contracted the hitman to kill Camilla.
Yeah.
The hitman who is Jacob from Lost.
Well, that was also the diner that she worked at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Supposedly, because it shows the waitress when she's meeting with the assassin, the hitman. The waitress, his name is Betty.
Yeah.
So she looks at her name tag, and so that's where she gets the name Betty for her persona that's created in the illusion.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
There's so much to unpack from the film. It's hard to really talk about everything in it.
It just kind of digs into her desires. I mean, I think you see through the first portion of the movie. I mean, really, everybody is where she in reality would have wanted them to be. You know what I mean? So Rita not only wants her but needs her. Like Rita needs her. She's her lifeline to a certain extent. You get to, like you mentioned, actors and like people she had passed on the way through here. She's an amazing actress. She's Rita needs her and to help her because she can't remember anything. The director is in a bad state, so on and so forth. I think it's really unpacking the most of it, and I'm sure that there's several different ways that it could go, because I mean there's so many ways that it builds up and then stops and then turns around and everything. I mean, I'm sure that there's a ton, but at a surface level, I mean, after you're throwing out, the first half is a fantasy versus the second half is the reality. The first half does, everybody kind of finds their place inside the fantasy based on how they treated her and where she would have wanted them to be. Maybe not everybody, but I feel like most,
Sure. And also, I want to mention that I think Naomi Watts is fantastic in this film.
Oh yeah,
I think she does an awesome job. I don't think any of the actors or actresses are bad, but she really does a great job. To me, she knocked it out of the park.
Well, the great thing is, like, she plays two different characters, really. And then inside of the first character, inside of Betty, when you see her acting, like, she actually acts in a way that you're seeing the character act like a hungry, aspiring young actress, coming in, really trying to get this role. I'm thinking about that one scene with the old dude. If you're
very hands-on.
Yeah,
dude.
the very hands-on guy. You see her kind of really hungry for that role, and so she's acting as someone who doesn't know how to act, acting with all their heart, does know how to act because she does a really good job. But she's acting while acting.
Yeah.
And then she flips that, gets rid of that character, and then goes into the Diane character, which she also does a fantastic job. But they're very different personalities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying makes sense?
Betty is super upbeat.
Yeah.
And just optimistic and bright.
Yeah, and whereas Diane is almost vindictive, you know.
One thing I noticed when I was rewatching it is it sounds a lot like Twin Peaks, and that is because it's composed by the same composer, Angelo Badalamenti. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name. But it does sound very Twin Peaks in the composition, which I enjoy, because after watching this and then watching some other David Lynch films, I watched Twin Peaks, and I really, really love Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
This is still my favorite Lynch film.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen Twin Peaks, so I can't make that comparison. But this one was really good. I mean, did you ever watch Memento?
Yes.
I kind of almost at points, not in the same way that it's going backward or anything, but kind of in the way that everything's chopped up. I almost got a similar feel as the first time I watched Memento, you know? How you kind of come in confused for a little while and then you start figuring out why everything's going the way it is.
Hey, pretty girl. Time to wake up.
If you had to pick a scene that stood out the most to you.
Humor. Like I said, I think the scene where the director is coming in and pouring the paint through the jewelry box is hands down just like, that would never be something that I would think of. And so it was just so funny to me, just that whole scene with how calm and casual they are in the bedroom. and you know, he just walks in, sees what's going on, picks it up, turns around, walks out, grabs a random, you know, paint bucket and outside of humor.
On the humor track, David Lynch always has weird humor in his stuff, and it's usually like in strange places, or it's juxtaposed with really dark and serious content. And Twin Peaks has a lot of that same kind of humor in it. It works really well.
I think outside of the humor aspect, one thing, because and again, you know, this is probably a whole other conversation that we don't want to dig into, but there are the little things that just really have no purpose. The you know, top guy with the casting agency, I guess, early on, you know, he takes a drink of the espresso and it just starts dribbling out of his mouth, and you know, they're like, that's one of the most highly recommended espressos in the world. And I'm like, it almost, you remember when we watched Rubber? Yeah. I know it's a weird B movie reference. When we watched Rubber, and all these people are just standing there with binoculars and everything,
on it.
It felt like that. You know what I mean? Like that dry, like almost, this is put in here just to make me turn my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, that part stuck with me just because it made me turn my head and scratch my head for a second. Yeah. The jump scare, of course, you know, there's a reason I started off mentioning it, because it's one of those. I will say, almost all of my most memorable scenes are from the fantasy part, because the reality part really kind of got into their relationship and had a more real feel, and it just kind of felt like a flowing, like it felt like a different movie. You know what I mean?
Well, the end's pretty devastating, really. It's depressing.
The end is depressing, but I'm saying I'm not just talking about the end. I'm talking about the ending, like the last, I want to say 30, 45 minutes of the movie or so.
You didn't like the old people coming out of the, what was it that they came out of at the end? They were tiny, and then they started chasing her.
So, again, going back to, like, there are weird parts in the movie that just stand out that I don't understand. It's like, there's that, and really, in the grand scheme of the movie, the beginning, when it's like the doodle bop, you know, dance competition, whatever thing, like, there are just points that don't make sense. And
Well, you see the old people at the beginning, and they're like, "You're gonna do great, Betty."
I didn't even make that connection.
And then they get in the cab, and they're just creepily smiling.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, something's something's messed up here.
For some reason, I didn't connect on that. I guess.
Yeah, it's the same old couple.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, but to me, and maybe it's just how my mind works. Like the last part of the movie was darker. It did away. You know, we were talking about the brighter colors and stuff like that. I feel like almost like the fantasy colors and everything that made everything feel vibrant and alive were gone in the last part of the movie.
It's. I'd have to rewatch it. Because I can't remember if it was like, it's possible that the first half is more like the colors are more contrasted. And
well, I believe
vibrant.
that they are, because even I remember thinking, you know, in the last part when she is Diane, even when she's standing in her apartment, you know, and the chick who she had in the fantasy world swapped apartments with, when that girl comes back to get her dishes and everything, she knocks on the door, and I remember thinking, she doesn't have any lights on in her apartment or anything, you know. It's just overall darker. Like, it's not as much of a contrast, and that was something that kind of stood out to me too. But no, in a scene, I would say hands down my favorite scene, just for comedy aspect, was the paint jewelry scene, and the jump scare, just because it pulled me in so well. Really just stands out to me. You know what I mean? Like the whole series of that scene, from them sitting there, I'm wondering why they're sitting there. I'm listening to him talk about his dream. And I'm like, you know, there's no way this goes to anything. But then pop, and there it is. What part stands out to you the most?
I think I would still have to go with Club Silencio as probably my favorite, just because of that whole veil that gets lifted. Yeah. And the lady singing that song is super intense.
Yeah.
And then Betty's like shaking and going crazy at one point. And it's, I don't know, something about that scene. That scene stood out to me the most the first time I watched it.
It's a super intense scene. And I do remember, you know, because she finds the key early on. And it's a weird looking key anyway.
Yeah.
And I remember wondering what the key is going to go to. And I actually thought that Rita was going to be Diane. You know, obviously the movie leads you to think that Rita is going to be Diane. Because at first, you know, when they call the number thinking that's going to be her number, and she says that's not my voice. Well, I remember when they're going up to the apartments, I was thinking the key was going to work that door. Well, the key was nowhere in there and everything. Yeah. So, when they got in Club Silencio, and she had the box, and I'm like, oh, well, this is what the key is going to open, obviously. So, you know, I was kind of more focused on what's in the box. And of course, you know, the box is kind of Pandora's box, where you just open back to reality. So,
yeah,
it's a really good movie. I mean, there are a lot of, I think that is the overall, my final take on the movie, is that there are so many little things that are done well, and there are so many little things that honestly just kind of throw you off. Like even going back to, you know, in that scene where the dude's dribbling the espresso out of his mouth. No purpose in that. And then, like, the head guy is behind glass, you know, in a wheelchair and everything. And it's, there's no purpose behind those things. You know what I mean?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say there's no purpose.
Well, okay. There's no purpose that I fully understand, you know?
Maybe, like, the espresso scene could just show you how peculiar or picky Hollywood is.
Pompous.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And then the guy in the wheelchair, I don't know. He's also in Twin Peaks, though.
Yeah.
So David Lynch likes him a lot.
Yeah.
And he's fine in this. He's fine in Twin Peaks. He's better in Twin Peaks because he has more of a role.
Yeah.
And he dances in Twin Peaks, which is... Overall, I guess we should probably wrap this up before it goes on forever, because there's so much you could talk about in this film. And that's why I told you to watch it and then sit on it and marinate for a little while before we discussed it.
Yeah.
Overall impressions, you liked the film?
I like it. I do. You know, I thought, like I said, I think it does a really good job of seeming choppy at the beginning. Kind of disconnected, discombobulated, like several stories within a story. But I like how everything ultimately feels intertwined. Like as the movie goes on, you start finding more connections between characters that when they're first introduced just feel like they're completely separate. It does a really good job pulling everything together, flipping everything around, and still giving a continuity while also being crazy enough that that continuity would not be obvious until you actually think it through. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But yeah, that was David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. It's an excellent film. If you've never watched it, check it out. It's pretty cheap. Buy it, rent it, download it, whatever you have to do. Check it out. And thank you for watching this video. We'll see you next time.